The 1970s were the last time America faced runaway inflation, and the lessons from that decade could save your wallet today. It's a slow, creeping feeling. The number on your paycheck stays the same, but your grocery bill gets a little bigger every single week. The price at the gas pump ticks up and never seems to come back down. That house you were saving for, that future you were planning, the goalposts keep moving further and further away. Economists call it the erosion of purchasing power. For most of us, it just feels like financial freedom slipping out of reach. It's a quiet, invisible tax. The feeling that you're working harder than ever, but still falling behind. In the 1970s, Americans were trapped in this exact nightmare. Only their crisis was even worse. They faced soaring interest rates, double-digit inflation, and mass unemployment, all at the same time. This isn't just a story about history. It's about money, wealth, and survival in the face of inflation. And what the 1970s can teach us about protecting our finances today. The crisis began with a presidential decree. In 1971, President Nixon severed the US dollar's last tie to gold, a moment known as the Nixon shock.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
Overnight, the dollar was no longer backed by a physical asset, but only by trust. And that trust was already shaky. To pay for the massively expensive Vietnam War, the government had been printing huge amounts of money, flooding the world with dollars. This oversupply devalued the currency, meaning each dollar was now worth less than it was before. The result was the beginning of shrinking purchasing power. The American economy was now vulnerable, a ship without an anchor, waiting for a storm. That storm hit in October 1973. In retaliation for US support of Israel in the Yom Kippur War, the oil-producing nations of OPEC unleashed a new kind of economic weapon, the OPEC oil embargo. They turned off the tap. The price of oil didn't just rise, it quadrupled. This was the energy shock that pushed the vulnerable American economy over the edge.
No gas. Some of the people online here have been in other lines and still don't have a tank of gas.
The result was immediate chaos on Main Street. The massive shortage of oil created fear, and that fear created an iconic image of the decade, the endless gas line. To control the chaos, states implemented emergency gas lines and rationing. The most famous system was odd-even rationing. If your license plate ended in an odd number, you could only buy gas on odd-numbered days of the month, even numbers on even days. Many stations also used a flag system, green for gas, red for empty, to signal their status. But the chaos at the pump was just the beginning, because the 1970s taught America a hard lesson. We don't just put oil in our cars, we live in a world made from it. It's the plastic in everything from Tupperware and vinyl records to polyester clothing. It's the asphalt used to pave every road. It's a critical component in the fertilizers used to grow our food. And most importantly, it's the diesel fuel used by the trucks and trains that transport every single product to every single store. So when the price of oil quadrupled, the cost of making and shipping everything exploded right along with it. This was the beginning of double-digit inflation. The monster was no longer at the door. It was in the house. Americans were now caught in a bizarre economic trap. For decades, the rules of economics were simple. Rule 1, in a bad economy, lots of people lose their jobs, but prices stay low. Rule 2, in a good economy, jobs are easy to find, but prices might go up. You got one problem or the other. But in the 1970s, for the first time, America got both at the same time. This was the impossible, infuriating problem we named in the beginning, stagflation. A stagnant economy with high unemployment combined with runaway inflation. It was the worst of both worlds. It defied the textbooks, and it had trapped the country in a vicious feedback loop. It was called the wage-price spiral. Here's how the trap worked. Step 1, the price of essentials like gas and food goes up. Step 2, workers see their shrinking purchasing power and demand higher wages just to keep up. Step 3, companies grant the raises, but then they raise their prices to cover their new, higher labor costs. Step 4, this makes prices go up even more, which forces workers to demand another raise. The spiral just kept spinning upward, and no one knew how to stop it. The government was paralyzed. The old tools didn't work. If the Federal Reserve raised interest rates to fight inflation, it would slow the economy and kill more jobs. But if they lowered rates to help create jobs, inflation would get even worse. They were trapped. Desperate, the government tried things like price controls, literally making it illegal to raise prices on certain goods. But this backfired and created even worse shortages. Here's the simple reason why. Imagine the government says a loaf of bread can't cost more than $1. For buyers, that's great news. Everyone wants to buy cheap bread. Demand goes up. But for the baker, if it costs them $1.10 just to make the bread, they'll simply stop baking it. Supply goes down. When you have high demand and low supply, you get a shortage. The debate raged across the country. Should the government intervene, or should the free markets be left alone to fix the mess? Nobody had a good answer. And while the experts in Washington argued, millions of American families didn't have time for economic theory. They just had to survive. While the government was trapped, American families had to find their own way out. This was the era of financial survival in times of scarcity, and it taught an entire generation a series of brutal budgeting lessons of inflation. The post-war dream of endless abundance was officially over. A new age of American hustle had begun. It started with a plea from the president himself. Jimmy Carter went on television and asked Americans to do their patriotic duty. Turn down their thermostats to 65 degrees and wear a sweater indoors.
All of us must learn to waste less energy. Simply by keeping our thermostats, for instance, at 65 degrees in the daytime and 55 degrees at night.
It became a national symbol of a new, humbler mindset of conservation. It was the first time an entire generation was forced to think about energy efficiency, a conversation that has only gotten louder today. But the real war was fought in the grocery aisles and the backyard. As food prices soared, a massive movement in home vegetable gardening exploded across the country. Manicured lawns were tilled and repurposed into thrift gardens, a new kind of victory garden for an economic war. Inside the kitchen, family budgets were completely rewritten. Expensive beef dinners were replaced with cheaper casseroles and pasta dishes. Coupon clipping went from a casual hobby to a meticulous weekly ritual. It was a crash course in maximizing every dollar, a forerunner to the modern obsessions with meal prep, couponing apps, and urban farming. And with corporate job security now a fantasy, the side hustle became a necessity. A kind of early gig economy was born from desperation. People offered handyman work or typing services out of their homes. For many suburban women, direct selling businesses like Tupperware parties became a vital source of supplemental income for the family. Even kids got involved, collecting aluminum cans and glass bottles, turning the neighborhood's trash into a few extra dollars of pocket money. It was the birth of the modern side hustle, proving that when a primary job isn't enough, you have to create your own opportunities, a reality that is all too familiar in today's gig economy. The dominance of giant, gas-guzzling American cars was shattered as a flood of small, fuel-efficient models from Japan reshaped the auto industry forever. The crisis sparked the first serious government investment in alternative energy, and a weary nation, tired of the chaos, listened to President Carter speak of a crisis of confidence, a sign that the unshakable optimism of the post-war era was truly over. These individual acts of survival did more than just help families get by. They began to change the fabric of America itself. They sparked surprising new innovations and set the stage for the next 20 years of economic history. The chaos of the 1970s eventually ended, but the story doesn't. Because, as the saying goes, history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. The long gas lines of 1974 may seem like a distant memory, but the fear of a new energy shock echoes in our headlines today. What the 1970s can teach us about today's inflation fears is that the most powerful tools for survival are often found not in Washington, but in our own homes and communities. The decade your money died was also the decade that taught an entire generation about financial resilience, and the lessons from that time are more relevant than ever. To go deeper on other financial strategies that emerged from this era and how you can apply them, check out my Substack. If you like the channel and want to see more videos like this, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the History of Hustle. See you next time.